Welcome to GBrain Data Academy. Excel is more than just numbers. Most people think Excel is just for typing numbers, but it can do so much more with just a few clicks. You can find patterns and turn data into insights. For example, we have a data set here with two columns. The first column is dealing with the company names, while the second one we have the parts. Now, this part represents the percentage shares. This data set has been transformed into a pie chart, that is a 3D pie chart with different slices here and different color. Each color and slice represents the percentage share of each company. So with Excel, you can do a lot of analysis that will transform a data into an insight. Now, most people only type data, but they never analyze it. If you check the picture we have here, this particular man is frustrated with the data set on a system in front of him, that is on the computer system we have in front of him. The data set contains a lot of rows. So now with Excel, you can actually turn this data set with a lot of rows into what we call a dashboard, for example, just for the purpose of visualization. And this visualization is dealing with what we call insight. For example, the first one we have here, we have $628 representing earning. The share 2,434, the likes 1,259, and the rating, which is like 8 and 5 for the rating. Different categories of ratings we have here. So now, the next thing we're going to do now is to look at an example of how we can do some calculations on the Microsoft Excel. Now let's look at this data set we have here. This data set we have here, the first column is talking about the employee ID, the second one is full name, the third one the department, the fourth one position, the fifth one we have the salary, and the hire date, which is the sixth one. If you check each column of this data, we can see that each of the column is already standardized, and this data set itself is already formatted as a table. Now, what are we expected to do here? We want to see how we can calculate the total salary for this data set given here. Now, the first thing we need to do, we go to the column dealing with salary. Now let's click the first cell under the salary column. After the heading, the next row is the second row, which is row 2. Now, what is the cell reference here? Look at this side. We have E2, that's the cell reference of this particular cell. So E2, now down to what? E8, which is the last row. That is under the salary, the last cell under the salary is E8. That is the cell reference for this particular cell, which is E8. You can see it here. Now, want to find the total, we can use what we call the sum function. And sum function, that is equal to, for every calculation, the first thing you need to type is what we call the equality sign, which is equal to. Equal to sum into brackets. What do we have? The first cell representing the first salary, E2. Then to the last one, which is E8. Then we close the bracket and we press enter. You can see the first cell here. Let me take it again, the first cell. Now down to the what? The last cell, which is E8 on this column dealing with salary. Now the total salary is now $506,000. Now let's see how we can calculate for the average salary. We're still going to use this. We have it here from E8 to what? That is from E2 to E8. That's what we have here. So for us to calculate the average salary, we are going to use the average function. Average function, which is equal to average then we have into brackets. What do we have? From E2, which is what we are having here, we can highlight like this, E2 to E8. You can see when you highlight like this, you can also solve it like that. Close the bracket, then press enter. It will give you the average salary. So we have the average salary here. Now the next thing we need to calculate now is the highest salary. The highest salary in this data set is the same thing as what we called the maximum salary. So we are going to use what we call the mass function. For every calculation, there must be equality sign. We have equal to mass, MAX. It's a function, you can see it here, into brackets. Now we can highlight this, or we type the first cell, the cell reference of the first cell here, which is for employee ID E1031. So the first salary, that is the salary of that employee we have here, is $88,000, and the cell reference is E2. Down to what? Down to E8. E2 to E8. So we have a semicolon in the middle. So which represents from E2 to E8. And this is called the cell range. The cell range for this column. Now we press enter. By the time you press enter, the highest salary is what? 95,000. The advantage of using this formula is this, because when you have a data set with like 20,000 rows, how do you determine the highest value, highest revenue, highest score? So that's one of the advantage of using what we call the mass function. Now we want to determine what we call the lowest salary. For the lowest salary, it means the minimum salary in the data set. The minimum salary of the employees in the company. And in this place we have about 8 employees. Now we want to determine the minimum salary. We go to the salary column. We can see from E2 to E8 represent the cell range for the salaries. E2 to E8. So what we are going to do, we type up our equality sign, then we use what we call the min function, that is MIN. MIN from the word minimum, min. MIN. Then into brackets what? Then the first cell here under the salary, which is at the row 2, representing the salary of Jacob Roy, E2. Then down to the last person, the salary of James Mary, which is E8. It's still the same thing as table 1 salary, because table 1 salary represents the salary column. That's the meaning. The salary column in the data set, that's table 1 salary. This data set is table 1. Then we are trying to calculate the salaries of employees in the salary column. So it's still the same thing. If I close the bracket now and press enter, I will have the value, which is $45,000 is the lowest salary of an employee in this company. I can also clean this and type from the first cell, which is E2, then down to what? The last cell, which is E8. You can see, close the bracket, then what are we having? We still have $45,000. So, to perform data analysis with Microsoft Excel is not difficult, provided you have mastered all the required skills. Don't just use Excel, master it. Register now at our website, GBrain Knowledge Concept, and join our data analysis with Microsoft Excel from zero level, with no technical background required, 100% scholarship, 2 weeks, live online class. We have some benefits for you: video certification, professional development. Ensure you register and join the class. Thank you.